Hello again. One of the things which is very noticeable about young people today is that an increasing number of them claim to be either bisexual or to be neither male nor female, so called non binary. A couple of surveys carried out by the student newspapers in Oxford and Cambridge found that fewer than half of the students who responded considered themselves to be heterosexual. I give links to one of these in the description to this video. Of course, we have to take this with a pinch of salt because this was a self-selected sample, which is to say that only those who wished to do so took part in the surveys. But even so, it does strike me that there is something a little rummy going on among young people in this country. Just a few years ago, more than 90% of them would have been straight, and the chances of coming across anyone at all who wished to change sex would have been vanishingly small. Of course, it might be that we've become freer and more open as a society, and that this accounts for the fact that so many are now claiming to be men in women's bodies and vice versa, and also that they are coming out as bisexuals. A closer look, though, indicates to me that there is more to the case than this. Attitudes to things like homosexuality change over the years. The ancient Greeks were very tolerant about it, but the early Christians thought it an abomination. In the Royal Navy in the 18th century, it was widely accepted. Churchill famously remarked that the traditions of Britain's navy could be summed up as rum, sodomy, and the lash. Later in the 19th century, though, the pendulum swung back again and it was treated as a hideous crime for men to have sex together. In the 1950s, 1960s, male homosexuality was tolerated in some areas of life, but not others. Many of the boys at all boys schools didn't have much at all to do with girls while they were at school, and they turned into hotbeds for a lot of same-sex activity of a fairly innocuous nature. An awful lot of older men today dabbled in this when they were teenagers. It was an accepted thing that this is what youngsters sometimes got up to, and most grew out of it. These days, though, homosexuality is not only accepted, it is positively encouraged. While many teenage boys in the 1950s and 60s were fooling around and experimenting with their sexuality, a lot of girls had very intense non-sexual relationships with each other. They would hold hands when walking along, and their passions for each other were far stronger than any emotional attachment seen in the average boy of that age. This didn't mean that they were lesbians or that they were really men in women's bodies. It was just a phase that they went through. Society generally worked so that this kind of thing faded away in the late teens, and men and women got married, that is to say, men to women and women to men, and quite right too. These adolescent crushes or sexual fumblings were forgotten as they grew to adulthood. The problem with the gay movement and pride marches and all the rest of it and the trans activists is that what was once viewed in a relaxed way as just an ordinary phase of late childhood has come to be seen as the essential character of young people. A girl who wishes to hold hands with other girls, or perhaps embrace them, is now regarded as a trans man in the making. A teenage boy who fools around sexually with another teenage boy is encouraged to think of himself as a homosexual. The case is even stranger with bisexuals. We've all of us known bisexuals. I suppose we have. I've known quite a few. The people who've swung both ways, or used to be called AC/DC. They were even less common a few years ago than male homosexuals and lesbians, and yet the survey at Oxford found that an astonishing 30%, almost a third of students, claimed to be bisexual. What is intriguing and has come to light from other surveys is that these are not in the main people who get in the sack with both men and women. These are people who have feelings for members of the same sex. So there are girls who have not ever, nor are they ever likely to, have sex with another girl, But because they feel strong and affectionate attachments for other women, they class themselves as bisexuals. This is absolutely nuts, of course. I think it would be a really good thing if we stopped this strange obsession which society seems to have these days about sex changes and homosexuality. Nobody cares, I'm sure, if men want to make love to men and so on, but it now seems that youngsters feel that it is boring and old-fashioned to be a normal heterosexual. This is a bit worrying, and I need hardly say that it does rather put me in mind of Weimar Germany.